that makes it a lot easier to just press the button, a physical button, instead of clicking on a button to mute and unmute. It's Friday, August 4th, 2023. And I'm going to go through the confirmation bias videos that I did in 2017. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. And I have a whole bunch of references here that we can go over as we go through. Good morning. It's 11 a.m. here, Mandy. Good morning. Hello, Dawn. Oh, that works out great, Mandy. It's podcastable, so no worries there. Most of the stuff I will be reading, it doesn't necessarily require. Hell, I could do a lot of these videos without having a camera, honestly. So before Cynthia tells me to do that, I'm going to do that. Really bad about that. Okay. Cupboard is bare. All right. So let me bring this up. So yeah, this was 2017, probably quarter 1, quarter 2, 2017, something like that. Where I'm at is at the family business. Cowboy owned the brew shop, and I would make these videos before we opened or after we closed, whichever. And this one's about confirmation bias. Should be pretty interesting. I want to kind of plow through it. Hey, Johnny V, that's my man. Okay. Hey, Johnny. I don't know if you're still here, but my old boss, Garrett Lawrence, retired Air Force, flew C-130s, Intel AWACS, I forget how you say it, is going to do a veteran, we're going to do a little veteran talks. I haven't come up with a title or anything. I'm probably going to get ChatGPT to figure it out for me. But yeah, Johnny is a longtime subscriber and personal friend and survivor and retired military. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to retired veterans, because we have seemingly so much in common from such different backgrounds. And Johnny is still here, as am I, which is a miracle. So, all right. Confirmation bias. Yeah. Good to see you, Johnny. I'll talk to you soon. I'm just wondering if I should have got more coffee. But we're going to go and we'll see. All right.
Hey, guys.
Now, similar to the other videos, this is 2017. I'm like super screwed up in the head, and I'm trying to figure out all kind of things, and I'm documenting this stuff. And there was this user named Kaiva Go, who was probably some kind of psychologist. I did find their new username handle on YouTube because there's from a comment of an old video. I can't remember the name of it. I have to go and look at it. But that user still exists, and and they tasked me with a whole crazy amount of comments like, check this out, check this out, check this out, check this out. Oh yeah, baby, if you want to bring me some more coffee, that would be fantastic. Oh, it's kind of a mess in here. I got cables all over the floor. All right, so yeah, just that freeze frame, it's just like that was in my head. I don't know if that makes sense.
Since last, I guess it was this week, the first part in the confirmation bias response video somehow or another got mixed up with the second part, and I uploaded the second part twice. So I'm going to go over the first part again, God help me, because the first part is really the most important, or I guess, the baseline for the rest of the other videos. Hopefully the other videos will make more sense with this first part. This is in response to Kaiba Go's comment on my cyberpsych video. So, confirmation bias, also known as confirmatory bias, is a tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs or hypotheses. It is a type of cognitive bias. If you don't know what that is, that
I have these. What is it? Control. I forget the hotkeys to switch tabs. Shift. Control Shift. Control Alt. Okay, we'll just do this. Cognitive bias. Systemic pattern of deviation from norm or rationality and judgment. Individuals create their own subjective reality. This is Wikipedia. From their perception of input. An individual's construction of reality, not the objective input, may dictate their behavior in the world. Thus, cognitive biases may sometimes lead to perceptual distortions, inaccurate judgment, illogical interpretation, and irrationality. While cognitive biases may initially appear to be negative, some are adaptive. They may lead to more effective actions in a given context. Furthermore, allowing cognitive biases enables faster decisions, which can be desirable when timeliness is more valuable than accuracy, as illustrated in heuristics, which is the process by which humans use mental shortcuts to arrive at decisions. Other cognitive biases are a byproduct of human processing limitations, resulting from a lack of appropriate mental mechanisms. Bounded rationality, which is the idea that rationality is limited when individuals make decisions, and under these limitations, rational individuals will select a decision that is satisfactory rather than optimal. The impact of the individual's constitution and biological state. See embodied cognition. The theory that many features of cognition, whether human or otherwise, are shaped by aspects of the organism's entire body. So that's theoretical at this point. But probably is a, a pretty cool theory. Or simply from a limited capacity of information processing. A continually evolving list of cognitive biases has been identified over the last six decades of research on human judgment and decision making in cognitive science, social psychology, and behavioral economics. The study of cognitive biases has practical implications for areas including clinical judgment, entrepreneurship, finance, and management, and those are very large terms, because management, you're talking about cults or you're talking about high control groups, the management involves management of people and management of all kinds of things, expectations, rewards, punishments, etc. Ad infinitum.
It's a deviation from normal rationality and judgment, whereby inferences about other people and situations may be drawn in an illogical fashion. um, so, it's a type of cognitive bias and a systematic error of inductive reasoning, which is reasoning from, they call it from the bottom up. Deductive reasoning is what you would study in law, where you try to establish premises before you make any sorts of judgments or statements about whatever it is you're thinking or talking or whatever about.
Yeah, so inductive versus deductive reasoning. Here we go. So just as a quick primer on that, inductive reasoning, specific observation, recognition of patterns, and then a conclusion. And that comes from within, and it's called a bottom-up approach because you're starting with yourself, even though it's on the top there. Deductive reasoning is what you will find in, taught in law schools. Scientists use it. They take an existing theory, formulate a hypothesis, collect data, analyze the data, and do or don't reject hypotheses. But what is your plagiarism score? I don't freaking know. I didn't know there was such a thing. So the definition of deductive reasoning: deduction minus baseline produced activation in the left dorsal lateral cortex, broadly consistent with left frontal activation observed by blah blah blah. This was it's used in criminal profiling. Makes sense, because when you accuse someone of something, if you're using inductive reasoning, there may be facts you're missing. Like, I don't know, watch court TV or something, or a trial, or study law, and you'll find that deductive reasoning is the way to go, because you can easily screw up a case and administer improper justice. Hey, naturism at Clearwater Beach. I feel all right. Yeah. I mean, innocent people can be easily convicted with inductive reasoning. I'll go out on a limb and say that, many hundreds of years ago, or maybe not that many hundreds of years ago, that, you go in front of the court and the king, and it was mostly inductive reasoning. Or tribal stuff. And, innocent people get, oh, baby. Thank you. Oh, you're going to brush my hair, too. Look at that.
That was a request.
That was a request. Who requested that?
I think Dawn.
Dawn. I'm getting the royal treatment here. Hey, Mock. How's it going? So I'm getting my hair brushed here. I guess I didn't do a good enough job. Because I did brush my hair before. Yeah, I guess I'll just enjoy my coffee and get my hair brushed. Yo, what up, Herbster? I'm blocking my hand there. There we go. Xenu. Thank you, baby. Mwah. Okay. Let's get back to this. Get back on track.
Inductive reasoning is the opposite. So that would be trying to figure something out from your beliefs. So people also tend to interpret evidence supporting their position. Bias, search, interpretation, and memory have been invoked to explain the attitude polarization, which is when a disagreement becomes more extreme even though the parties are exposed to the same evidence. Belief perseverance, when beliefs persist after the evidence for them is shown to be false.
Commodore.
And the irrational.
Okay, fucking distractions. Let's go back.
So
dog.
That would be
getting my hair brushed. What are you trying to do, Dawn? Ugh. Like, I brushed my hair.
Trying to fix.
I brushed my hair. Did it not look good enough? Big screen, the dog, Marcus. That's in order. Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll start a Lulu cam or something. OnlyFans.
Figure something out from your beliefs.
Shit.
The opposite. So, whatever it is you're thinking,
there we are.
Talking, or whatever about.
Confirmation bias.
Inductive reasoning.
Unruly
is,
today.
The opposite. So, that would be trying to figure something out from your beliefs.
Now, trying to figure something out from your beliefs. That's an interesting thing. I believe it can be done because I believe that people can believe things and have... In fact, that's one of the big draws, I think, towards belief, is that you can end your search for whatever ultimate truth you're looking for if you believe in something or you accept something. I guess pertinent or can't talk this morning. I was on the road most of the week, and today is my first day back in the studio. So, speaking of the devil, we got a sortie flying over the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, so UAP phenomenon, like a belief, personal belief, may lead you to what you believe is an ultimate truth. And for all intents and purposes, it is your ultimate truth. And then you can sort of accept that truth and let it go, and it doesn't, cause you any sort of, doesn't keep you up at night and whatnot. You like seeing me and Cynthia together. That's sweet. All right, so Commodore, thank you, sir.
So people also tend to interpret evidence supporting their position. Bias, search, interpretation, and memory have been invoked to explain the attitude polarization, which is when a disagreement becomes more extreme even though the parties are exposed to the same evidence.
Okay, so here's another thing. Attitude polarization. also known as group polarization. Do the Lulu howl. Okay, baby. I will do the Lulu howl. You got it. Anything you want, you got it. Anything you need, you got it. Anything at all. All right. So, baby. Attitude polarization. Attitude polarization is a phenomenon where people's attitudes or beliefs strengthen and become more extreme as they engage in intensive thought about the attitude object. Source: D.K. Friedman, ed. History of Psychology edition, or I guess, I don't know, volume 1, Handbook of Psychology, New York. But, there's multiple links. Attitude polarization is also known as belief polarization. It's a phenomenon in which disagreement becomes more extreme as the different parties consider evidence on the issue. It is one of the effects of confirmation bias. So, we started talking about confirmation bias. We looked at what cognitive bias is, right? We looked at inductive versus deductive reasoning and the difference between the two. The inductive comes internally from your belief, and deductive is looking at it objectively, which is another point to make here is that, Chris Shelton at this time cranking out videos, critical thinking. He saw very clearly that he needed to do and learn critical thinking skills, because that's deductive instead of inductive. And I was lucky enough at McNeese State University to take a really great legal class, and I'm also lucky enough to have had two really awesome legal mentors for years. Leslie Berman, who is from New York and Long Island, grew up in the 70s, mid 70s, and was part of this whole cool cultural thing that was going on in New York, and she was in law school, but she got into music because she was hanging out with a bunch of musicians, and yeah, some of the stories and experience that she's imparted to me as a protege, whatever you want to call it, or invaluable. Also, another person, Steve Moore, who passed in 2019 in February, or March, I think it was March, wrote the book, The Truth About the Music Business, and he was blacklisted from Nashville for doing so because he predicted everything what's happening right now. He predicted a good 10 years easy, and if you really want to stretch it and read it, it's a 450-page book, but a lot of, there's no way someone can be, well, maybe there is, but like, he was accurate within degrees of accuracy, like just a few degrees in some cases, where things that are happening now with streaming and whatnot, as it relates to artists, musicians, and even film and television stuff. He predicted in 1999. He wrote that book, and it got him blackballed because the industry was not ready to accept that reality. Well, here it is. So I was incredibly lucky. And Thomas Lane was my professor at this time, and he really challenged everybody in the class. We're not very long into it. Commodore. Probably, yeah, 3 minutes in.
Belief perseverance. When beliefs persist after the evidence for them is shown to be false.
I guess what I'm trying to say in stupid, like, basic terms is that this is the confirmation bias. Like, it's a way to start constructing layer by layer a group that acts as an individual, which is what I see in high control groups. It's one giant monster. It's the same thing with a military unit, which is why I'm interested in talking to veterans, because when you operate in a unit, you're one body, you're one entity, or at least you really want to be. You want the guy next to you to sort of, have all of their senses about them. And because if not, it can become a liability to you, to your team, to your life. And there are similarities here where in the military, it's been said they tear you down and build you back up. And I'm not directly comparing Scientology and any branch of the service and saying that the service is just abusive. Of course, there's abuses that happen. You hear about them on the news. They get held accountable for them. Some probably, yeah, of course, there's going to be some that aren't accounted for. I think the accountability is the big issue, because when you have the label of a church, you can just not be held accountable for anything. But there's a lot of similarities in that you've broken down, you built back up, and these are some of the tools. Here we go, more tools.
And the irrational primacy effect.
All right, what the hell is the irrational primacy effect? Well, the primacy effect is the tendency to remember the first piece of information we encounter better than information presented later on. Why and where does this occur? So, this is a funny little picture here. Retention, meaning memory, zone of premium, and they spelt it wrong. Love it. Premium remembering, zone of and then zone of recent things. So the first thing, if I showed you some pictures or whatever, numbers, you would remember some of the first things you saw better. So where this bias occurs, it can occur in a variety of ways. For example, when an individual tries to remember something from a long list of words, they will remember words listed at the beginning instead of the middle. The primacy effect aids an individual in recalling information they first see better than information presented later on. To cater to this cognitive bias, so this is a form of cognitive bias, another form of cognitive bias. You stack up cognitive bias in Scientology with people the same way you stack up cognitive bias in a program that is designed to strip away who you are and rebuild you. Companies often use television, radio, internet, and print advertising to present us with the first impression of their product even before it is available. Additionally, this technique is used in news stories about upcoming phone releases or movie previews, or on your Facebook, or on your TikTok, or on your YouTube, all of that stuff. The primacy effect. These are things that are thought about before some, like these platforms, launch in many cases, especially with Facebook. They went through all kinds of psychological, established theories and established behavior patterns based on deductive reasoning and empirical evidence. So, take it how you want. Every corporation, every business, many, I'll replace every with many, is looking at how to get into your mind. How do they get into your mind and change it? Everything, even, people do this. Corporations do this, and corporations are considered people, right? So weird. Corporation is a person, has rights. So the primacy effect can potentially have significant impact on our choices. Well, no kidding, right? I mean, what did I just say? Corporations, governments, news organizations, they all have the intention of getting into your mind and affecting it and changing it and affect your decision making. Now, even if you are, this is a really long article and it's great, and I'll keep the tabs open and put them in the description for real this time, because when I was making these, it was really off the cuff. And as I said, there were a lot of other things going on in my life that I just, this was extra. But this is all really, really good stuff. Anchoring bias. There are many types of cognitive bias, is what I would say. And these cognitive biases are taken advantage of by people who are aware of those kinds of biases that exist. So, Amy Jean, I guess that's why people say first impressions matter so much. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. What's that from? Can anybody remember what that tagline was? Because you never get a second chance to make a first impression. It was on the TV. I can't give you guys anything. I can do a reaction. I can give whoever comes up with that answer 100 in the little, live reactions. It's about the best I can do. My podunk little channel here. I'm indie to the core. Here we go.
Which the primacy effect is, if I show you a group of numbers, or say like list of addresses, show it to you for, these are all backwards. That ain't gonna help. If I show you a set of numbers, a series of numbers, you're more likely to remember the first series first, and forget the other sets of series. It's called the primacy effect, and illusory correlation, where people falsely perceive an association between two events. So illusory correlation would be like, you're sick, you've got a potential trouble, you've got a SP in your life. Because the only reason you're sick is because you're PTS.
I'm going to need to pay more attention to the comments from now on. So, A. Jansen, welcome. I don't remember seeing your name recently, but Daniela Mestiniak Young, I hope I said that right. Mestiniak, or Mestianic Young. Daniela Mestianic Young writes about the similarities between military and cults. Well, I need to read some of her stuff, don't I? Yes. I will write this down right now while I link some of my other stuff. If you guys haven't already subscribed, which y'all probably already have, to these. And then there's a link to the Honorarium page that I'll post for the album The City of New Orleans. Put my brother, myself, and Rick Nelson into the Honorarium of Crescent City Sounds, and the State Library has made a physical copy for archival purposes. There's the link there. Okay. Oh, I didn't write her name down. I need to write that name down, because if there's an author that is writing about this, I want to read it. So I'm going to write this down. Daniela Mestyanek Young. There we go. All right, cool. And I'll just write author, cults, plus military. And I mean, yeah, it's a culture, right? It is a culture, as Mark Turi correctly, rightly says. Culture. It is a culture. Does a culture mean a cult? Yes, it's short for culture. However, what is the difference between the charged up word, they're in a cult, and I'm in a gaming cult? Well, the difference is, what kind of things is that culture cultivating? What are they? What kind of bias are they prone to? How many types of information bias, and how are they using their biases, on their members? If is it in a destructive way, harmful way, then that is what I would consider to be that charged word. You're in a cult. Well, yeah, so are you. But what kind of cult am I? What kind of culture am I in? Well, I'm not in a culture of hate, etc. Mock says, it's one of the tricks I used in school. Make a good first impression, and something a little later, I slept through half the class and paid attention when it got interesting. Dawn says, I don't pay much attention to first impressions. I watch for consistency. Yeah, I mean, that's important too. But the point really is that is what people are remembering, what's sticking. So you may not pay much attention to a first impression, but that information empirically shows that you're probably more likely to remember the first information. And Brian says there's a quote. Where is it? I don't see the quote. From Will Rogers. You never get a second chance to make a first impression? Is that it? I ain't even gonna lie. I didn't even fucking know. So let's check it. Who said you never get a second chance to? There, it already filled it out. Well, it says Andrew Grant, but Will Rogers under Forbes here. So I'll give you Well, you say Google is amazing, but look, it says Andrew Grant. I don't even know who that is. You know? Who's Andrew Grant? Whether Oscar Wilde or Will Rogers first said it isn't particularly important. Neither is this. So, but that quote is relevant based on what Amy said and our topic. Our topic of the day, confirmation bias. Let's continue. Oh, yeah, everyone in here. I got some noodles up there. Got a lot of wrinkle brains up in here.
That's illusory correlation in Scientology. Series of
illusory correlation. So let's see if I had pulled that up. Is this it? Illusory correlation. So illusory correlation, there's two definitions in the APA Dictionary of Psychology, which is the American Psychological Association. Illusory correlation is either number one, the appearance of a relationship that in reality does not exist, or definition number two, an overestimation to the degree of relationship, Ito est, that's what IE means, which means that is to say, correlation. So let's read that from the top again. An overestimation of the degree of relationship, that is to say, correlation between two variables. For example, if an unusual action occurred at the same time that an adolescent was present in a group of adults, the assumption that the action was carried out by the adolescent would be an illusory correlation. Oh, y'all are on top of this shit. Amy and Jansen, Jansen. I really feel kind of like naked that I didn't know this. This is some information I'd love to review before I, talk to some of the retired veterans. Might be some cool stuff to talk about with them. Illusory correlation. Here's the issue with this video and with the amount. I mean, I'm taking my time. I'm doing it on my own time. I'm happy that there's some people here, but this is going to be here. Yeah, I mean, I can't see myself removing this. This is, this is less attractive to like OSA and stuff because I'm talking about psychology and I'm doing my own self-analysis or whatever. I'm reviewing things that I've done, and I'm not like doing the sensational type, make fun of David Miscap, make Scientology jokes or whatever. This is, my little internet space that I, share with people, but it's my space. And I just don't think what I'm doing with it is that interesting to OSA. And they are actually very active right now. Holy shit. Okay. So, what I was going to say is that there's so many potential, like, correlations. Correlation. Have you ever had a friend who has gone into correlation after being on YouTube for like 3 days, and they call you and they're like, "Oh my God, I just figured out all this stuff." There is a point where the correlations, there's, as it says in the definition, the appearance of a relationship that in reality does not exist. I mean, maybe there's portals in Antarctica where they perform satanic rituals and there are aliens that, are transdimensional demons or whatever. But, like, there's some theories that make all of these correlations. It's just like, well, if I'm going to deduce that, I can't. I can only go from the bottom up. In other words, I can only induce that reasoning instead of deduce the reasoning. And that makes sense. Um, Hubbard, L. Ron Hubbard, Commodore, hip hip. What do you see when you go back to the old videos? Hey, Juliana, welcome. Commodore, what I see is different depending on the time period, because there were, things were rapidly changing day to day. There were 2 years where I was going through a custody case that was incredibly high conflict. Was being sued, and money was flying out of my pocket and my bank account and my assets so fast. What I see is stress. I see myself, not eating. I mean, I don't literally see that in this video, but I know that's what was going on. I see trouble sleeping. I see a troubled person. That's what I see. But I also am grateful to who that person is for writing, or not writing, for documenting something that wasn't that. Because I have tons of documents when it comes to all that, high conflict, divorce, receipts and child support and allegations and blah, 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 blah. Psych reports, psych profiles, evaluations. And that was when I started therapy. I started therapy a year before this. And it's been a slow but steady, improvement on a lot of things. So, I see a lot of different things to answer your question. That's kind of why I go through it, because there are moments in some of the previous videos that I've done where I realize, oh, that's when I was really stressed out. Like in the covert hypnosis video, the neurolinguistic programming video that I did. That was just before I lost all of my musical equipment. So, hey, Beachcomber, welcome. Yeah. It's nice to see everybody. Juliana, I hope you see how far you've come and appreciate that. Cynthia has told me this in different ways over the years. We've been together for 4 years. And, I don't always see the progress. I don't always see it. There was a point where, I don't know, I just felt like I got unplugged from a lot of things, numb. And even as conditions started to improve, it's almost unbelievable. So, I can only take little bites of the acceptance of what the reality is. Sometimes I wake up and I just can't believe that, there's air conditioning. I have I'm living in a house. I have a studio. That's all still overwhelming to me. So, I sat in isolation for a good amount of time. Didn't have any money, sleeping couches or studios in the woods, and I got used to that isolation. And then COVID happened. So, Yeah, Mark says, I love seeing relaxed and generally content you. Um, I feel more relaxed now because weed's legal. I really just, I still smoked when it was illegal, but man, that's extra stress I don't need. Um, and yeah, in a lot of these old videos, I am. It's a fight. I'm constantly. My brain is pumping out cortisol. I'm being like, nah, whatever the word is. You can say triggered, but it's fight or flight. I'm in fight or flight a lot of the time, and around this time is when I learned that CPTSD causes sort of a cycle of that, where even if there's no trauma going on, like some people with PTSD don't get triggered that often and don't get the cortisol and adenosine and uh, the other two chemicals that keep you up, keep you from sleeping. That cycle for me for many years just continued, and so that's another thing that I see. I'm just amped up, but I'm not high. I was absolutely clean and sober because it was alleged I was a drug dealer and drug addict and all this stuff. So like, I was completely straight. I mean, I did work at a brew store, and I would taste test people's stuff, and no, I didn't like, oh, taste test, like drink a bunch. I don't even like drinking. I can't stand it. Hangovers or hell. Um, okay. Glad Cynthia's here for me. Yeah, definitely. Um, what, you got mad with you? Okay. Y'all talking about Zero Dark Tony. I haven't even looked since like that second or third video.
Psychological experiments in the 60s suggested that people are biased towards confirming their existing beliefs.
Now that's some nasty shit. It produced the Unabomber, what was it? It's now disclosed, but it was denied that to even exist as one of these secret projects. Timothy Leary was involved. There were some pretty brutal. Of course, there was Milgram and Ash, and those experiments were, uh, you know, well known. But there were a lot of other MK Ultra stuff. So MK Ultra, these are some of the principles I think would be used and practiced without any sort of, you can do it through churches. You can do it through cults. And you can test. Okay, baby. I do that. There's the buy me a coffee link.
It mentions apophenia, so I wanted to tell you what that.
More words. Apophenia. All right. Apophenia, also known as patternicity, means seeing patterns in random events. It also applies when people deduce meaning from numbers, images, shapes, or any other objects that are truly random. This phenomenon is very common. We routinely look for patterns and are predisposed to finding patterns, even when there are none. People with schizophrenia, patternicity can be a feature of paranoia or delusions where you may believe you're under threat. You may hold this belief because you see patterns in media or other aspects of the environment. So the phenomenon is very common. I'm not sure how common schizophrenia is, but apophenia, which is a feature of it, is very common. I'm going to go ahead and close that illusory correlate. No, I'm going to keep that up. I'm going to keep all this up. May need it. So already you got a mess. You talk about confirmation bias, and you already immediately got a mess because you have all these other cognitive biases. So confirmation bias is just one form of cognitive bias. What up, Nico Rasu? Nico Rasu is in and has been. I mean, we haven't been gaming in months, but Nico Rasu is in a part of the gaming culture that that I share with people all over the world. Yeah, you're a pattern of randomness. You're just static noise. All right.
Is apophenia is the tendency to attribute meaning to perceived connections or patterns between seemingly unrelated things.
Hold on. Commodore says, seriously, going back, Marcus brought one of the biggest first uploads out about Scientology with Big Blue behind him. Think it's 7 years old. You're probably talking about, I think I know exactly which one you're talking about. The one that scared the ever-loving piss out of me after I uploaded it, because my channel didn't have any, like 17 subscribers. And the day that I uploaded this, yeah, it's this one. This is the one you're talking about. This was 8 years ago. I was 34. Published it in 2014, but it had over 20,000 views. I panicked and deleted it. Fear of fair game and lack of activity on YouTube from of other former members, and having seen what happened to them, I removed it. I republished it in May of 2015. Yeah. Several things precipitated this video. When I found out Mike Render left RTC, my initial contact with him receiving a COMEV, which is a committee of evidence, which is a Nazi tribunal type action from Baton Rouge, Mission, I decided to not go the COMEV route and risk getting declared. So far, I have not been. That's the video, isn't it? It's long. It's Tony was going to publish it, and then I just said to hell with it. I'm going to publish it. Okay. That was a hard video to make.
Confirmation bias is a variation of apophenia. So, the belief perseverance is, I guess I don't know. You'd have to look at Chris Sheldon's sources probably. He sources his material a lot better than I do. But the average time for someone to recover from a cult is like 10 years or something. The belief perseverance, like I left in 2004 church, and it was about 2000.
Important distinction to make is, yeah, I left in 2004. However, I did not reject all of Scientology until 2012, 2013. And it was a slow process, like going up to 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. Like, I felt like I was just throwing baggage off a boat, you know? Just throwing baggage, and there was so much of it. Just throw it. And but then the boat's really light. It's like, shit. How do I fucking drive this thing? It's an adaptate. You have to adapt somehow, and yeah.
13 that I finally like discarded or replaced my beliefs. So, uh, belief perseverance when beliefs persist after the evidence for them is shown to be false. That the evidence was shown to be false many times in those 10 or 9 years after I left. Um, but I still used the inductive reasoning, using uh, my own beliefs to try to explain what's going on. And
I found this connecting with other Scientologists, for lack of a better word, because we weren't involved. We weren't active Scientologists. We considered ourselves Scientologists. This includes my brother, Alex Merricks, Jason Rutland, even people who were active Scientologists, Dominic Boudreau, Eve Boudreau, um, and like uh, whoever could sort of had knowledge about Scientology. And, we come up with different reasons for, like, trying to get the trying to get our own biases aligned back into I guess, a sensible, less destructive uh, of uh, way of thinking, such as like considering, one time I was talking to Jason Rutland, and he said, well, all the church does is practice black Dianetics, which when you're in the organization, Hubbard talks about people who run all the processes in reverse, which would, in his words, like crush a person, spiritually, emotionally, etc. And coming out of Scientology feels very much like you've been crushed. So, we would take Hubbard's own concepts and be like, well, that's what was done. And in a way, that was a way out. It led to, well, for some of us it did, some of us it didn't. I miss Jason, and he got pulled back in after being gone for a very long time. Okay, Cynthia. Okay. Wait a minute. What? Beach, I lost count. Commodore, I lost count of the amount of times he called me a cunt. That is funny. A. Jensen, leaving is just one step in the deconstruction process. It took me a long time to really see through Islam as a whole and leave it completely behind. Wow. Yes. You see, there's no difference, right? And this is what I'm finding with the veterans too. This is why I love talking to my friends that are retired military. It doesn't matter. The methods are the same. Yeah, I have a lyric, something like that. Change my methods, but I'm still the same. Might not get caught, but I'm still to blame. Hey, Miss J, welcome. And like to Jansen, my heart goes out to you. That's it's such a huge thing to go through. But yeah, you find yourself crushed. And so me and other members that were like contemplating leaving the faith, if you want to call Scientology faith, there's very little faith involved. In my opinion, that's just my opinion. the uh, yeah, the tendency to sort of use it against itself to justify it so that you are no longer an apostate in your own mind or to anyone else. Um, you know, makes it you start to get group bias that's different than the group bias that you had before, and it's a healthier bias. See, bias isn't necessarily bad. Um, Brian Lucas, the Navy is still a big part of my identity. I love the fact that I'm a sailor. I love the fact that you're a sailor and a poet. You know, it goes back to what the culture is cultivating. My little brother was in the Navy as well, and that's a big part of his identity still. And it was not a bad thing, but that's not to say that every person that goes in the Navy will have a good experience, or the Army, or the Marines. There are situational things that can put people in predicaments where they have to make hard decisions, and that can leave a lasting mark on your identity that is not necessarily something that you want as part of your identity. Yeah, much love to you, A. Jansen. Seriously, that's thank you for sharing that, and thank you for being here. And it goes out to everybody, but that was quite a share, because you just revealed how the how crushed of a person you were. Brian Lucas, I served with people I hated and they hated me, but when it came to getting the job done, we came together and did it. And what does Juliana Bittencourt say? We're all in this together. See, that's the part of the Navy culture. That's the part of the military culture. That's the part of tribal associations and gaming cultures that is not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. We're all in this together. We are, all of us. So, the bickering, the picking, because a lot of times in the military and even in the gaming culture, because our gaming culture is based in military methodologies and stuff. So, you get a lot of different people who have very, specific skills or are good at specific things, but these personality types may not jive. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Right? Okay, I don't have to soapbox that anymore. We are all in this together. And I'll throw some hearts. Woo. All right. So many freaking layers to these biases. And how someone can put them together. The news does it. The government does it. Military does it. My gaming guild does it. We do it as families. But are those biases hurting people? If they are, consider changing them. It's and look at it not inductively but deductively. Comme ça. And then Brian finished up saying that's what they taught us to do in boot camp. And yes, drilling it, while maybe sort of people who have a problem with authority don't, adhere to that sort of stuff very well. I'm sure that you can feel that feeling of accomplishment. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but even in gaming, there have been moments of like this feeling that we all did this. We did it together. We did it together despite all of our differences, of which sometimes there were a great many. But when it comes down to it, you have your job to do. You have your objective to complete. You have your mission to complete. And, if it's not, I'm talking about video games, this is vastly different from, operating in the real world, in terms of what your mission is. But in a way, it's also can be scarier too, because there is a heavy psychological aspect to a culture of people who've never met each other, who are online, and are essentially, seems like an off the subject term, but not culpable for any actions of someone else online. And if you're a real geek and you want to get into some of the psychological disasters and social, psychosocial cyber disasters, EVE Online has produced suicides from this kind of lack of care and culpability for the way a culture develops online in terms of massively multiplayer online games, where you have large groups of people that are essentially organizations and have their own rules and ways that they accomplish things. They're mocked up governments. Some of them are communists. Some of them are dictatorships. Some of them are democracies. Some of them are kleptocracies. Some of them are meritocracies. It runs the full spectrum. It's like a giant social experiment. It's amazing. Some of my best memories, again, Brian Lucas, some of my best memories from the Navy was pulling all-nighter, get the ship ready to leave, work on a 400 hertz power, without which the ship couldn't defend itself. Yeah, stress. That moment of stress. But like I said before, it's not just you're part of a bigger thing. So it gives you a lot of life force. Mock says discourse is the way to the best compromise because it allows all views to be tested. I can't argue with that.
The stronger you believe something, the stronger the confirmation bias. In other words, the more you're going to try to figure it out using your beliefs instead of, and the more you're going to have illusory correlations.
Right. So that's important in regards to, from my experience in Scientology, and I'm sure it applies to everything else, as I've already said. But in Scientology, there's group correlation. You got illusory correlation and group correlation, and they reinforce each other the more time you spend around Scientologists that are constantly putting L. Ron Hubbard's bulletins and communications and books in front of you. So, and it's a pretty insane view. Like, I'm not sure A. Jansen, like if there were instances like that in Islam teachings or in whatever sect of Islam that you were in, but like in Scientology, like the more time I spent with executives, which would be considered, I don't know, mentors or priests or rabbis or something like that, the more extreme and the more pressing it seemed. Like, I mean, for this is a powerful word, but Scientologists are on a jihad. They are on a jihad to clear the planet. That is their jihad. And the more you are exposed and the more frequent, and the more time you spend constantly around them, the group bias, the someone else's illusory bias may turn into your bias, and in that way, if there is someone who is, you know, has some free will or freedom, like a lot of cult leaders do, like they're able to do what they want. They have all the money that they need. Then those biases can just be sort of seeded into their little community, and it will spread.
And also, which is also kind of like apophenia. So,
So I turned my mic off and back on. So I said it was kind of like apophenia, what I was just describing. But what I think I meant was that it leads to these extreme sort of downward spirals of cognitive ability. You know, apophenia, also known as patternicity, meaning seeing patterns in random events. If you've ever picked up, and again, my experiences with Scientology, if you ever picked up an OT mag or a flag magazine and read one of these OT success stories, it's apophenia. They're just writing down an instance of apophenia. So, that's that.
yeah, this actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. The first video I did probably was a little too much. It was 20 minutes long. I don't think I needed to do it that long. I mean, essentially, confirmation bias is the tendency to recall information that confirms your belief. So that, you know, confirmation. And the bias would be, you know, trying to find a way to make it fit your beliefs. So yeah, I mean, it's like polarizing. Um, I hope that's good enough. And I hope that leads well into the part 2 and 3.
Yes, I am going to go through all of them. Fuck it. It's like another, each video is probably around 10, 15 minutes. Amy Jean says, I think that's how most churches work, maybe. Question mark. The more immersed you get, the more money you donate, or the more kids you send on missions, the more normal all of that seems. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the if you're, it's all bias, right? Like, the way I understand bias is it's sort of like bending something a certain way, or getting someone's, you know, taking someone's rational thought and making something rational that isn't, by means of inducing belief, or inducing reason, right? We're talking about rationality and reason, how that gets overwritten by inductive reasoning, which is from subjective. Let's go back to this. Inductive versus deductive reasoning. Specific observation, pattern recognition, otherwise known as patternicity or apophenia, and then a conclusion. So, versus deductive, which is, you know, an existing theory, which, God forbid you bring up anything in the course room at a Scientology place, in a course room, and really try to prove it to the course supervisor that conflicts with what Hubbard says. Is apophenia, okay, Dawn, is apophenia like after being addicted by aliens? You see alien faces and everything. No. I mean, it could be. Let's see. Seeing patterns in random events. I would describe it more as like, oh, it's 2:22, and it was 2:20. It was 3:33 yesterday when I looked at the clock. That must mean whatever's on your mind, some thought, whatever. Aspersion. There is something to do with meaning, where there is none. But I mean, I could see how that could be, somewhat applicable. It also applies when people deduce meaning. See, that's the thing, though. The deduction meaning being the important thing. So just looking at a picture of an alien, seeing aliens everywhere, if there's a meaning for it for you, then yeah, I would say that constitutes apophenia. Phenomenon is very common. Good question. Okay. Commodore, let us be born and make our own decisions as we get older. That's a simple thing. I like that. A. Jansen. Yes, immersion. That's the word I was looking for. You get sucked in more and more. Get more and more distant from the outside world. Yeah, you kind of. Thank you. That's sort of the feeling that I was looking to express. Like when I was saying the downward spiral, you become more and more isolated from the world. You said it perfectly. You're more and more distant from the outside world, and worse, your true inner self. You're right. That is even worse. Because even if you get back into the outside world, you're lost. Am I right? If you know I'm right, Chad did it. That guy kills me. All right. So, mock, it's like a filter in a way and takes away from the full view. Yeah, absolutely. It's not even like a filter. It is a filter. This is, again, governments use all of this knowledge. News media uses all of this knowledge. I'm being generalizing, but you get the point. Yes, it's filters. Beachcomber, you have to make it fit your beliefs. That's correct. Confirmation bias. Why else would you spend all that time and money dedicated to this ideology? Well, whether the ideology requires money or not, which Scientology requires, just it doesn't even matter how much you have. They just want all of it. So, yeah, I think that's kind of what I was saying. Creating a subjective reality, where an individual's construction of reality, not objective input, may dictate the behavior of the world. And that's sort of a baseline when you incorporate all this other stuff, because all these things actually work together. The inductive versus deductive reasoning, primacy effect, belief, perseverance, representative bias, hindsight bias, the illusion of control, like all of these things. This is what I was doing during my therapy, was looking through all this stuff. I had a great therapist, Don Short, and he grew up as a Mennonite, and he just had a shitload of resources. And also, Kaiva Go, one of the subscribers, had to have been some sort of either pre-grad or post-grad psychology or psychiatrist. Very, very, like, just threw out all the references that I was seeking. So all of these really work in concert, like think of a cult leader as a conductor. These are all of the things that are being conducted.
Because I made those 2 days ago.
No, Mind My Blues, you are not blocked. There are only 2 people blocked. I'll be completely transparent. Zero Dark Tony and Dazed But Not Confused. In the past, I had blocked the Commodore years ago. So I was afraid. I really freaked out. I thought, I can't explain how silly I feel, but like, yeah, I was really freaked out about OSA and stuff. Well, yeah, Dawn, Marcus, oh, weird. Mind My Blues. Okay, I'll look into that, but you're not blocked. Like I said, the only 2 people are blocked. There's Zero Dark Tony and Doug. So, yeah, all comments. Instead of top chat, that's one way to maybe troubleshoot and see.
If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe if you're interested in and you like the content. I've also got a Patreon page up now.
I started a Patreon page back then, and I had a production like set up to do stuff, but it was not a good time to do it because, as I said, there were thank you for whoever donated. That's very much appreciated. I don't typically disclose the donations just because I never know if someone wants to be acknowledged. But yeah, there was a lot of crap going on, man. Like, court stuff, and I just didn't have time.
It's way too early and I haven't had enough coffee.
This is a good day to do this one because I feel the same way today.
The Patreon page is /Wogworld. So patreon.com
And just to freaking disclose and disclaim this, like, I really did not know until Aaron Smith Levin had posted on the Aftermath supporters page a definition that I had never seen about what that word means. And from my experience in Scientology and growing up in southern Louisiana, I mean, I've heard some racist terms, but I had never heard that one. And in Scientology, that was the first place I encountered it. So I just thought it was another one of Hubbard's made-up words.
/Wogworld. And I also have a Discord for those of you savvy enough to know what that is. And if you ever want to chat on my VoIP server.
So that was a different Discord, and I've been using Discord since 2015. I'll link the Discord now if anyone wants to join it. There it is. This is the end of this one.
I'm new
almost.
to the whole Patreon thing.
So,
in studying
Patreon.
psychology, there is a lot of overlapping terminology, words that seem to mean the same thing, coined by different people or whatever. So, yeah, it's confirming your own belief, confirmation bias, and it's a perpetuation. It's a perpetuating thing, because when you confirm something, like say you're sick and you know that there's an SP around, and you search, you do a search and discovery for the SP, which is a Scientology process, and then you locate the SP, and then you either handle or disconnect from the SP. And let's say by that time, it took you a week or so to find the SP, and then a day or two to think about how to handle them, and then you go and handle them, and it's been almost 2 weeks, and then your sickness has run its course. The belief perseverance will be reinforced. So the effect is stronger. The more you confirm these illusory correlations for your particular belief, because you confirm your belief, and therefore it creates this bias. So it stacks. It stacks. The more you do it, the more powerful it is. So, on to the next video.
All right. So, I just want to get through this shit. All right.
Okay. My phone died. I apologize. When I went to move it, it hit the side button there, and it turned off. So I'll do 2 parts. This is probably a 2-part video. Anyway, it hit the side. So we were.
Oh wow, 33 minutes.
We were on.
Fuck it.
Attitude polarization. So group polarization, and I was only going to do the overview because you could really go into a lot of detail on attitude polarization, especially when you're talking about individual Scientologists. Some of you may have questions about particular celebrities, and their behavior and stuff. I could give you some insight into some of those. The ones that I knew personally from Scientology was Juliette Lewis. I met Beck only once, and Jason Lee, Macaulay Culkin's first wife, Rachel Miner, Lindsay Bartleson, who was on Grounded for Life.
So around this time, people were asking me, what celebrities did you know, and what blah blah blah. That's what people are interested in.
Marcus Coloma, who was in Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Chihuahua, and probably some others that I'm not even remembering or thinking about. Celebrities never really tickled my fancy. I was a stage manager in Nashville for a year, so it's I've actually forgotten celebrities that I've met. So the overview is that group polarization is an important phenomenon in social psychology, and is observable in many social contexts.
Beachcomber says, "You little old name dropper, you." Here's the thing: people were asking me, who, and I really could give a flying fuck. Like, when I was 19, I was working in Nashville with big country stars, right? Yeah, here we go, name dropping again. But here's the thing: I couldn't, like, working around those people was like working offshore. It's like you just can't wait to be done and get your money and just, yeah. When am I done, and when do I get paid? And in many cases, where I was in Nashville, the people that I did work with were so uppity and snooty. And these are people that are representing, talk about shatter my whole reality that I grew up with in the 80s of country music, when all of the stars are like uppity snobs who get pissy when their Perrier isn't the right flavor, and that this is a true story. of the vanity that existed in country music in the year 2000, 2001. There was an artist. It was actually a whole band, but this one guy, the lead guy, made this a thing for the stage managers. And his bottle of water, I don't have a bottle. Well, I do have this bottle. So the bottle of water had to be completely open, the seal broken, placed at an o'clock orientation on the mic stand, and then you get the first, there you go, the first little spiral, and then one turn. So that, this was the reason, I'll tell you the reason why, so that they could, any one of them at any point in the show could go and knock the thing into the audience. And this was a point of like argument and bitching on the tour bus for not, like a meeting where you have, okay, well, we didn't have the bottles prepared correctly. This was like a tirade for 3 to 4 hours, sometimes a couple nights in a row. And yeah, mock. Some of those demands are just insanely absurd. Yes, yes, yes. And when I learned that at a young age, teenager basically, that this is what I thought was country music or the music business, and these are the more conservative ones, like what is it like in Hollywood? Well, honestly, the celebrities that I knew in Hollywood were way more chill. But there were some people in the industry, like in fashion and stuff, that were just, like what kind of, they almost seem like aliens, man. Like the things that they thought were important. Like, what does it freaking matter? Okay.
Texts. For example, a group of women who hold moderately feminist views tend to demonstrate heightened pro-feminism beliefs following group discussion. Similarly, have shown that after deliberating together, mock jury members often decided on punitive damage awards that were either larger or smaller than the amount any individual juror had favored prior to deliberation. The studies indicated that when the jurors favored a relatively low reward, discussion would lead to an even more lenient result, while if the jury was inclined to impose a stiff penalty, discussion would make it even harsher.
I'm not even exactly sure what the hell I'm talking about here, but Mock said, even if it's annoying, it is really worth ruining. Is it really worth ruining your day when you could just enjoy life? That was the thing that was the most aggravating, is that these celebrities knew exactly that that's what they were doing, ruining your day. They're just going to ruin your whole day. They're going to ruin multiple days because they're paying you. Many times because I was being, sometimes it was because they were resentful that I made more money than they did. And they're the artists. They're the ones out there playing. At that time, I made $250 a day in 2001 and 2002. And we would be out on the road for 2 months or something. And I got per diem and other perks and benefits, whatever. But they made like $120, $125 up to, some shows they'd make more than me. But on average, my salary was higher than theirs. So was the tour managers and the bus driver. Like, they made the least amount out of everybody. And felt that they had the most right to the money. Celebrity skin.
Moreover, in recent years, the internet and online social media have also presented opportunities to observe group polarization and compile new research. This is what I want to research. It's like
group polarization is what I'm talking about. Beachcomber, oh God, you shattered my dreams. I thought they would be so cool in Nashville. They're not. They're not. Honestly, indie is the only thing that's left that's cool. Like it's just because the market has narrowed so much and there's only so much money in the market, they can't take any risks. It's just that's the simplest way I could describe music. The big record labels can't take any risks. They have to take risks as part of their job, as part of their job description. They don't know if an artist is going to resonate with a demographic of people, but they take a risk, and they can. It's been just like Steve Moore predicted. Over time, the risk is going to become so great that there's not going to be very much diversity, and self-publishing is going to blow up, and that is what is happening. It has been happening.
Psychologists have found that social media outlets such as Facebook and Twitter demonstrate that group polarization.
Oh, Miss J, you're right. R. Kelly was straight up cool. Like, I didn't spend a lot of time with him. He got out of his fancy thing in front of the internet cafe one time, and I was just walking by, and he was like, "Yo, what's up, man?" And he had this giant ice pick with ice all over it, and he went out of his way to say hello to me. Not R. Kelly. I'm thinking Jay-Z. Fucking R. Kelly. Jay-Z.
Can occur even when a group is not physically together, as long as the group of individuals begins with the same fundamental opinion on the topic and a consistent dialogue is.
What a fucking mistake to make, R. Kelly and Jay-Z. That tells you how much I pay attention to R&B, I guess, and rap.
And compile new research. This is what I want to research. Psychologists have found that social media outlets such as Facebook and Twitter demonstrate that group polarization can occur even when a group is not physically together, as long as the group of individuals begins with the same fundamental opinion on the topic and a consistent dialogue is kept going. Group polarization can occur. President Trump, perfect example. The group polarization was occurring through social media.
Now, we're talking about group polarization here, and I just said President Trump. This was 2017. What year was he elected? I don't even know. 2016? Yeah, so he may have been president for a year. But I'd recognize some group polarization in the Republican Party, of which I was a registered member.
No one thought he was going to win. The polls weren't showing him winning all the way up until the very, very end. But that effect of group polarization is very, very powerful. And so attitudes and attitude polarization is very powerful. Your attitude.
Beachcomber, mouth closed. Yeah, I mean, all I'm talking about is group polarization. So, and this happens in both political parties, so it's not even really a partisan issue. It's part of the system. I mean, it is a partisan issue because each party is polarizing and using bias and using, controlled information through the media, and reporting and doing interviews and whatnot. Like that is just like culture, and just like how culture is cultivated. The bias that you put out isn't necessarily good or bad. It just is bias, and it can cause other people to be like, that fits into my view. It confirms their bias, and then if they meet another person that has that same confirmed bias, well, now they're a duo. But you see how it just spreads, right? And if you use the illusory truth effect, which is repeating something over and over and over and over and over again, you increase the chances and the likelihood of a confirmation bias sticking, or creating what's that thing called? illusory. Is it up here? Nope. Deductive reason. It's probably the one I closed, ain't it? No, here it is. Illusory correlation. So the more you use, is my theory. The more you use the illusory truth effect, you can induce illusory correlations, right? And then you can take someone that may not have any kind of confirmation of your bias that you're consistently providing, and induce illusory correlation, and thus getting into confirmation, which is where all these beliefs get really stuck. And may have something to do with, not genders, can't find your name. Well, that's just top chat. I need to go to all comments. Okay. Patience is a virtue, my friends. If you want the information. Okay. Well, the person who mentioned Islam, I suspect that these confirmation biases that get repeatedly confirmed through group bias, group confirmation bias, group reinforcement, belief perseverance, otherwise group reinforcement. The technical term is belief perseverance. I've said it with Doug and with Mark Turi, where I say it differently, where it's just group reinforcement, but it's called belief perseverance. So that aspect that you talked about, where you said even worse than being alienated from the world, even if you get back to the world, you've lost yourself. And I believe that there's a connection there with the confirmation biases, which are sort of, I visualize as core beliefs, whether they are yours or not, whether they've been, all of these tools have been used in a system to get you to confirm a bias through inductive reasoning. Where was it? I'm sorry, I keep clicking everywhere. This one. Inducing illusory correlation. And so, yeah, you completely lose yourself.
Dude is very, very powerful in your life and in others. Just your own singular attitude can affect the attitude of many others. Of course, there's, like it said, a lot of other factors, but that's what I'm not going into. Those are the things that you could get really complicated, talking about individual attitudes and how, say, one group, a family, say, just one family of 3 or 4 people or 5 people, the attitudes of each one of those family members will affect the entire family, and discussions about particular things that they have beliefs in can lead to extremely positive, like I was saying, extremely punitive or extremely lenient situations or attitude or judgments. And it all relates back to bias and deductive reasoning and apophenia and all this stuff. So back to confirmation bias, the attitude polarization. All right. When a disagreement becomes more extreme, even though the different parties are...
So, okay, now, attitude polarization, I think that's probably why I brought up the election, because this is a little different than, it's related to confirmation bias, because you can obtain confirmation bias through attitude polarization, us versus them. where you get to a point to where this person shares none of, and this is usually an illusory correlation. Well, that person doesn't believe this. They don't believe this, and I believe this. And if we can't agree on that, then we have nothing to discuss.
Exposed to the same evidence, that's what that's when the polarization occurs. So, belief perseverance, when beliefs persist after the evidence is shown for them to be false. Belief perseverance. So, even if someone shows you that's incorrect, you still believe that it's true. I have a guy. There's a guy I know who believes the Earth is flat, and it doesn't matter what you say, the Earth is flat. He'll find something online and show you, look, it's flat. The moon landings were fake, etc. That's belief perseverance. The irrational primacy effect, which is a greater reliance on information encountered earlier in a series, which is essentially the first thing.
Speaking of flat earthers, if there's any flat earthers here, I got to give you mad respect, because that's been a long held belief. So props for that. That's dedication.
An example of the primacy effect would be if I showed you a series of numbers. Do you think you would remember the first set of numbers, or the second set of numbers, or the third set of numbers? Well, you're going to remember the first set. That's the primacy effect. So the same thing works with beliefs, unfortunately. Raise your kids right.
Oh, wow. Oh, man.
Same thing works with beliefs, unfortunately. Raise your kids right.
Okay. I was thinking about my kids. I just know it. At the time, my kids were living in an extension of someone's house. No carpet, concrete floors, no running water, no bathroom. And there was a couch. No AC or heat for 2 years. So, like, anytime I mention kids, I would just... That face that I made is just... is very telling to me.
Honestly, the main inspiration for me wanting to become a social cyber psychologist is for kids, for children. I've been in the workforce, and I've...
Hey, Bo Beats. Hold on, y'all are cutting up here. I gotta see this. Mock says it's eroding the norms little by little, because there's somewhat of an okay justification, and suddenly you did stuff that horrifies you enough to suppress it to avoid dealing with it. I wish I'd have read that earlier in context. Bo Beats. Hi, Marcus. Chose to watch you, someone with pure intentions, rather than hate watch that Zero Deep Thinker CDT, who is also currently live. Much love to you. Oh, is he live? Well, good for him. Let's see. Mock Cats. This is the one that's great. Cats would have pushed everything regarding the flat Earth theory. Cats would have pushed everything off the surface by now. Let's be real. That shit's awesome. True, too, probably. Beachcomber, don't worry. The flurfs will fall off the edge soon. I don't know what flurfs are. Beachcomber, glad to see you here rather than with your buddy Zoni. Hopefully that wasn't a dig. And then Dawn, flat Earth theory, like the Mandela effect, is psyop. Meh, who knows? When it comes to psyops, I'm a firm believer that, the intelligence, and I talked about this with Mark Turi on a Saturday one time, and went crazy with talking about intelligence. You'll never know with real intelligence. You'll only know what you're meant to know. It's a need to know.
Seen some major problems, and I've been in the school system as a teacher, and I've seen some major problems. Um, and it's like the technology that we haven't. It's been unleashed, and it's caused social phenomena that aren't necessarily bad, but can lead to behaviors that are just completely unpredictable and in a wide variation in such a way that it does affect work, you know, the workforce in general. And there's tons of papers you can read online about.
I see, Bo Beats. Um, I'll reread your comment. Hi, Marcus. I chose to watch you, someone with pure intention, rather than the hate watch that Zero Deep Thinker, who is also currently live. And I forgot to include the with, let's see now, what does it say? Face vomiting. Much love to you. And then at Beachcomber, glad to see you here rather than with your buddy Zoni. So, what was I going to say? Oh, and I asked you, or I said, I hope that wasn't a dig, and you said it kind of was, but I will behave now. Thank you. Let's be respectful. So, and then Beachcomber says, Bo Beats, my buddy, I still watch, with a question mark, I still watch him from the shadows. He is slowly imploding. I mean, I've tuned into some of his streams, so we all have our damn right to go and watch whatever the hell we want. Juliana Bittencourt, the Scientologist, which, if you haven't checked out her channel, you should go subscribe. I will even take the time out of my busy schedule to go to Juliana Bittencourt and see what comes up. There we go. And then I'm going to grab the link and I'm going to post it here and go subscribe if you are so inclined. I encourage it. She says, we're having Michelle Carpenter tomorrow, and next week we'll have a chatathon. Excellent. I don't know who Michelle Carpenter is. In my production schedule that I get paid millions of dollars for, I wish. Cupboards are bare. Here we go. It's shameless at this point. Fuck it. Boom. All right. Yeah. I'm not sure who Michelle Carpenter is. Maybe if she's an ex-Scientologist or another survivor of another coercive group. A chatathon. Those, I don't know how y'all do those. It reminds me of sleepovers and staying up all night. Mock says, Dawn, I'm very stubborn and not phased easily, but even I gotta acknowledge the beat me on that I raise terriers easily. I don't know. Okay. Oh, I know you got nothing yet, but like I have faith in you, Juliana. If you go to her page and subscribe, ain't nothing there. Really. You got a short. You got you do your lives broadcasted here. This one's tomorrow with Mark Turi. Is that right? Yeah. Love that dude. And yeah, so your lives are streamed there. You got a couple playlists. You should feature some other channels. I should put you on my featured stuff too. All right. Back to the vidya.
How crappy millennials are and how crappy Generation X is or whatever. or in the opposite, how great they are. But I believe that the what they call the millennials, like there's a small period of time between the Generation X and the millennials where there's a generation there that is.
Okay, Commodore, he says you're a lot better on the computer tech now than you were back in the day. That's not true. I was actually probably better back then, but I did not have the time to do anything other than work. So these, like I said, this was right before work or after work. Um, and yeah, I mean, I do have a little more gear, but man, I was doing all kind of stuff for like social media marketing contract stuff that websites, interactive stuff, but that was work. I wasn't putting that kind of work. After putting in a whole day of work doing that, I wasn't doing that for myself. I was just documenting.
Isn't either one. You can see it in the surveys and stuff that are done from.
Hold up, Bo Beats. By the way, apparently I am the infamous doxer. Got a screenshot of his live chat stating as much. So yeah, that's clearly why he has had me blocked for a month, and he ain't Mersh. I don't know what Mersh means. Okay, so yeah, you've doxed somebody. It's easy enough to fabricate almost anything these days.
Anyone born from 1978 to 1985. It's like a micro demographic of a generation. There's a name for them. I forget what they call them, Xenials or something. So, belief perseverance. Boy, we are going into some deep shit. We're about to. The irrational primacy effect. You're going to believe something. You're going to believe the first thing, or you're going to remember the first thing, that you're shown. Which is incredibly important when you're talking about Scientology, because the first actions that you do in Scientology will define whether or not you stick around, really. And that's due to the primacy effect. The illusory correlation, when people falsely perceive an association between two events or situations. Perfect example at a Scientology event at the Shrine Auditorium would be the balance of theta and in theta. All right, these are two concepts that are presented in Scientology as basically good and evil. And they talk about this illusory concept or correlations. They will say, we have finally tipped the scales. There's more theta than in theta, or there's more, we need to tip the scales because there's more in theta than there is theta. So give us your money. And when something happens to you, it's always your fault. Like, this is illusory correlation. So you pulled it in. They call that pulling it in Scientology. So if I break my leg, I pulled that in.
All right, so now I'm talking about Scientology concepts as they relate to illusory correlations and how an illusory correlation can be induced and brought into someone's bias. And I'm using PTSness, potential trouble source, and suppressive persons as the example.
Because of some sin that I committed. They don't call it sins, they call it overts. An overt action that you knew that was wrong. My nose is just sinuses. I'm not doing cocaine, I promise. I'm on caffeine.
And again, just like a previous video, I'm so fucking defensive at this point in my life. I constantly feel like I had to have like a Sparta shield at all times. The attorney that my ex-wife had was just fucking relentless and kept me busy all the time with crap. Anyways, so I'm very, even when I went for my first psych eval, I have a recording of it, and I'm so like nervous. I've got so much nervous energy because I am terrified. Not only am I terrified that I'm talking out about Scientology, but I'm also still kind of terrified about psychology and psychiatry too. Didn't know much about it.
So, and then confirmation bias goes on to talk about experiments. So, I'm going to stop right there and talk about Scientology and all the things that I spoke about.
This used to aggravate the piss out of me. People calling before business hours, because I'd already gotten everything. I mean, there wasn't much to really set up or anything as a brew store, but people would drive from a long ways, and they knew our hours, and they just wanted to chat. They're chatty people. It's kind of, if I had to describe it, it was like working at a feed store in the country, but it was in the city.
The confirmation bias encompasses a lot, as you can tell if you've watched this far. So, I can't really say that confirmation bias is the only factor that you're dealing with in Scientology. You're dealing with all the other things that I talked about as well. And the link is for all these things I've gone over is in the 4 years later I want to be a cyber psych video. Kaiva Go is the highlighted comment, and there's a bunch of links that I'm going through to talk about how they relate to Scientology.
And I mentioned that user earlier, and though they claim to not be educated in psychology or psychiatry, it's hard to believe because the list of things that that person provided was so exhaustive and healing for me to go through and read. It allowed me to process some things pretty quickly and cope while I was in the stressful situation that I was in with the divorce. And yeah, got to give credit.
You can follow that and with this video if you want to keep up with everything.
Party!
So the biggest issue that you see, or that I saw, was at these events. You know, I was never a good Scientologist. I was always in ethics, constantly in trouble. Occasionally was upstat, but most of the time was in lower conditions. There's maybe out of the 2 years that I was on staff, a total of 3 to 4 weeks where I was upstat, and that's 104 weeks. So very small percentage of time.
Yeah, so I apparently did the math or went off of my memory, like on average, how many, because it's not even really weeks that you're upstat, it's really daily. But I, at that time, I'm probably still had some of my my stat sheets. You get stat sheets and you draw your graphs every day, and your week ending graph, your condition is assigned. So out of 100 weeks, that doesn't sound right. Yeah, probably 52 weeks. Yeah, 52, 2 years, 52 times 2, 104. I estimated that I was upstat for maybe 4 weeks. Now, upstat is actually in our missions meant above affluence. That was upstat, above affluence, which is where, affluence is where ethically no one can really mess with you as long as you remain affluent. But for us to be considered upstat, we had to be above the normal.
After you leave the cult, that perseverance of belief perseverance. This is why people say it takes a long time to recover from a cult, because even though you leave and you know that group was just nothing but evil, there are beliefs that persist, and over time, as you get back into your real life and reality, you'll test.
Juliana, Scientology's expectation of exponential growth is impossible. It's like the structure of an MLM. It doesn't hold. That's absolutely correct. I believe that because of so many of the contradictory, uh, you know, uh, bulletins and instructions, that's exactly why. It's in that way, it's similar to an MLM.
Or at least I did. You'll test the beliefs, because you still have the beliefs, but you're in a foreign world because you were living in cult world, and now you're living in the WOG world. Ding. And when you're living in the WOG world and you still have the beliefs of Scientology, you actually see Scientology happening all around you, just like you did when you were in. Except over time, you start the rational part of your, assuming you're around people who have never been in, people who love you, people who care about you, people that knew you before. There are environmental factors involved, is what I'm saying. In my recovery from the perseverance of the beliefs, because I didn't even look, or even when I thought about looking online at some of the negative Scientology material that I'd been told about, I would feel guilty for thinking about it. But over time, I tested, the ethics conditions. I did doubt conditions on everything. I built an online guild. Let me tell you something. This is a really funny story. My wife and I were married. It wasn't long after that I realized she wasn't very social. I'm in a band. I'm a musician. I've always been in bands, and I've been a musician since I was a kid. My grandfather I remember my grandfather taught me how to play the guitar, and I've always been in bands, so a lot of social. I'm a very social person. When you play a gig and stuff, people want to talk to you, and then there's a social aspect of the band itself. After my wife and I were married, we would go to shows, or she would come to shows. But when I would get on stage, she was just, and even before I got on stage, she would either be right by my side, being completely quiet, or she'd be off in a corner or at a table by herself, looking real nervous and anxious. And if I gave her my credit card to go drink, there were a couple nights where she drank. And she was a skinny girl, very tall, and she would drink 6 to 8 beers in 30 minutes to try and relax herself, but she ended up getting sick. So after that happened a few times, and I had to literally carry her into the car and carry her home and all that, Um, I just I lost some desire. I lost some of my desire to be as social as I used to be. But I still was in bands. I just show up for the gig, play the gig, go home to my wife. And speaking of the biases, a lot of people think that musicians cheat on their wives all the time. I can tell you that it's just like the black guy with the baggy pants. It's that's a bias. You know, that's a stereotype. I never cheated on my wife when I was on the road, and I was on the road a lot. Um, I love, I still love my ex-wife. We have two beautiful children. Of course, if you've seen some of my previous videos, you might know that there was a lot of conflict in our divorce, but our children are okay now. So that's
So in 2016, the divorce was finalized, but the aftermath of the aftermath. There's aftermaths, a lot of aftermaths: hurricanes, divorces, um, Scientology, uh, ex-Scientology, OSA, just aftermaths after aftermaths.
I will love her forever till the day I die, and I'll only ever have one wife. That's just gonna be, you know, maybe knock on wood, but uh,
I mean, it's pretty fucking clear that, like, I had absolutely no desire or hope to ever have a relationship again at this point. I was more focused on my kids and the I was hanging on by a thread, so I didn't have any room at all in my mind, in my life, for any attachment like that. And I look sad about it.
she gave me children, and I'm forever grateful for her for that, to her for that. Um, so the story goes, I needed a way to socialize. I needed a way to connect with people. Early in my life, my friend uh, started playing World of Warcraft, an online MMO, massively multiplayer online game. He disappeared. I never saw him again. Uh, I mean, I have seen him in recent years, but I mean, he disappeared and just played WoW for 6, 7 years. And I didn't like the idea of that. To me, it was like, why not just like be social with people, you know, or play a game with someone. If you want to play a game by yourself or with someone else. But for God's sake, don't forsake your whole social network just for a game. Well, I didn't have an opportunity, or I felt like I didn't have the opportunity to develop my marriage and myself and my wife in a way socially that would work for her because of her anxiety. And so I didn't want to play I didn't want to play an MMO, but I knew that there were social connections there to be made. I found out about a game called Fallen Earth, and I ended up playing it. And I used Scientology principles. This is where I tested my. This is where I did a majority of my testing of my beliefs, because the belief perseverance was occurring. I would use Scientology premises and principles inside a virtual world. In this virtual world, Fallen Earth, you can Google it. It's a post-apocalyptic, massive multiplayer online game. The objective is to control and maintain resources, and it's an apocalyptic wasteland, kind of like Mad Max. When I got to the highest level that you could get to, there was a giant clan, guild, whatever you want to call them, called Fist of the Empire. and they dominated the entire server. You could not go into any PvP zone where all the good stuff was and not get murdered your face off. So I started sneaking into these PvP zones to get resources. I happened to find some of the most valuable resources in the game, and then I started producing armor for sale, and it was the top tier armor you could get at the time. There were no negative penalties to the armor, whereas other armors did have negative penalties. Long story short, I hated that guild because they were just oppressive. They wanted to, if they didn't kill you, they wanted to take all your money, and some people gave them all their money in the game. I hated this guild. I thought it was just horrible, you know. Bad enough that it's post-apocalyptic, but now you got like Mad Max villains roll around. Of course, I guess they're role playing that a little bit. But I vowed to destroy that group, and
Now these aren't non-player people. These are actual people, as I was sort of describing earlier about gaming culture. You know, just like all of the other points in this topic about biases and group conformity, belief perseverance, all that reinforcement, illusory correlation. This group was very well established in doing that because many of them had military experience on the leader of the group was like GS 12 or something, which is 2 or 3 ranks under full bird colonel ranking as a civilian. So they were very familiar with how to control large groups of people, and this was an online community. It was not NPCs; these are real people, and they're treating other people even though it's in a game. There were people who were either role playing or would get very like frustrated, and it would cause them a lot of mental distress, a lot of hell, even self-harm type behavior. And because it was a game that they wanted to experience all of, and they couldn't because they were being held out by this big, it wasn't even that big, but it didn't have to be. They're a very efficient group.
what I ended up doing was selling them the armor, and then they were wondering, where's all this armor coming from? Because we can't find the materials. I was able to find the materials in the land that they owned that they couldn't even find because they were so focused on killing people that none of them ever had time or looked around their large, huge pieces of land modeled after the parts of New Mexico to find the like titanium or anything valuable. So I ended up paying rent to make them in the entire Fist of the Empire fighting force. They're in all of their armor. And
Fist of the Empire was the group that I was describing that I detested.
And they used an old army
I detested them because it reminded me so much of Scientology.
designation system. And I was part of the logistics team after a while because I was making money hand over fist and they didn't know it. No pun intended. And they wanted me in the guild just as a financial resource and a logistical resource. So there were certain materials that they needed that they couldn't find anywhere, and I knew where to find them. I managed to, and I was a horrible PvPer. I didn't know anything about it, so I learned from their operations division how to fight. And once I got good at that, I got really good at that. More so leading, not so much fighting, but I was able to to corral people in a certain direction with the things that I learned in Scientology, using methods that, that I don't truly understand, which is part of why I'm studying psychology. Some of the methods that I know to use in sales or manipulation, I don't really understand. I just know how to do them. I was trained to do them. So,
Yeah, I've learned a lot about how all that works, and I can say that, back then in 2009 and 2010, during when Fallen Earth was a thing, I was, in essence, doing a hostile takeover of a little paramilitary gaming group with their own culture, and like hostile takeover, like from sabotage and subterfuge, and creating situations, creating problems, going in, create problems within the organization. And it was, I was suspect to some of the leaders, but they never could prove anything. And so they just kicked me out. But the result was they left the game. All the people stayed, and they joined Exile, which was the name of the guild that I created, because in some sense I felt like, an exile.
I sabotaged this entire group, and they fell apart. I destroyed this clan in that game. They still exist in other games, but in that game, I was able to completely eradicate that scourge from the server, and that's all I wanted to do. But what happened is, after they were gone, some of the people who had a fucking brain, who were tired of being, because Fist of the Empire was like a cult in a game. You did not question authority at all. No questioning authority. If someone said you do something, you do something. Now, this may seem crazy to you because it's in a video game. This whole concept and this whole conversation may just seem completely foreign. But it happens in games. So what I'm saying is that Fist of the Empire in Fallen Earth was kind of a cult. And there's blind obedience to authority. And whenever the authority collapsed and left, there were people who were still playing the game who reached out to me and were like, hey, what are you doing? Because the whole thing, no one knew that I caused this, because I did it using dirty tricks, using fair game, using organizational executive technology, all the shit that's in Scientology. This was my testing ground for the beliefs that I had. And
now, I mean, I would call this sociopathic behavior on a what do you call it? Digital sociopathy. And 2009, 2010, I was still a Scientologist in my mind, so there was no moral question of what I was doing. I just knew to apply this or that. If this, then that. If that, then this. Pressure, 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 pressure. Create problem. Create, destroy. All that still just came right out. So, yeah.
I can tell you that, yes, you can destroy something or someone or an organization with precepts in some of the material in Scientology. That should be clear, because it's been done, People
I keep hearing the chair. It's the chair in the video, not my chair. Let's see, Juliana The Scientologist. I can see how that can be appealing. It's just that I can't get competitive. Oh, you're talking about PvP. I get too anxious, mess up. See, that was part of what I was good at, is helping people. We had this thing where we had the Care Bears to Killers program. So we'd take people who were crafters and PvEers and gradually introduce them to PvP and show them how to build a PvP character and all of that. And it was a long, engaging process. It was actually very exhausting for a lot of the PvPers, and burnout happened because to take someone really to enjoy that. Yeah, there's a bunch of you got to get meta with it, So some people aren't into the meta. Care for JCYT says, I play games with myself. I'm too competitive and go nuts. So many games I used to play it was like that. I play games during most streams. That's cool. Mock says, underestimating someone is stupid. Yeah, I mean, the scariest thing you could run into in the woods is another person. And if you think about it, if you're in a video game and you're in an area where you could be killed, even in the video game, there's something with it's like the body doesn't know any different in a way. Like that anxiety, that fear, that adrenaline kicks in. You see that other person, you're like, oh shit, that's an intelligent person. Like, that's the scariest thing you can encounter. And I guess because this is something one of my therapists said, that I'm very comfortable in traumatic situations or hectic. Actually, I'm more comfortable in those situations than I am in normal situations. Like, when the shit hits the fan, like, I'm good. And I think that's why in Exile I made a decent leader. I was not a great PvPer. I had a couple of characters that were like meta tweaked to the max that made it basically an I win button. But yeah, underestimating anyone, is it's unwise. Bo Beats, I feel like that what ZDT is trying to do to SPTV, he is hellbent on creating discord. Marx's game story is proof it can work. Mind my blues as the determination. Juliana, I can play better as support. See, and that is exactly how we would approach that. Getting someone involved with PvP, even though you hate it, it could be done in a way gradually to where you feel more comfortable. And that's the way that we did that. It's a really good way to do it. It just takes a while. And then if someone stops playing the game, then other people get they're like, oh, we lost our healer or we lost our DPS or whatever. And people are like, I don't want to go out and fight. We don't have so-and-so. It's similar to raids, except you're playing against real people. Dawn, Juliana, women are cooperative rather than competitive. You're in your feminine energy rather than your masculine. Good on you. I mean, yeah, but there's some girls out there that are like PvP competitive gamers that are insanely good and insanely aggressive, not just in the PvP zone, but like in the world itself. Intimidation and all sorts of stuff that's from the manosphere. Someone said earlier the manosphere. I like that. The femisphere and the manosphere.
People get harangued all the time and harassed, and in the policy itself says they can be destroyed with no punishment, and that is exactly what I did. And I was not punished. In fact, I was rewarded Because after the Fist of the Empire dissolved, I got all of the best PvPers, the best players in the game at that time on my side. And from that, I built, along with them, I used Scientology with the organizational executive technology. I had all my OECs sitting right by my computer.
Yeah, this is no bullshit. And also an interesting thing, just to like fast forward to now, and over that period of time from 2010 to was when Exile was founded to now, we're very inactive. But over time, it was replaced and integrated with Dick Nixon's basic army structure, S1 through S5. So there is a control mechanism. There is a hierarchy. There are, like officers. There are people with rank. But it's similar to, it's hive-mindish a little bit. But as with the music, when my friend Dale asked me to get involved with Octane Sound, I told him, you might as well just like, you might as well, what did I tell him? I can't remember the exact words. I basically told him that, if you're trying to do a music label or a record label or anything, like, hang it up for as long as it takes for you to build it from the ground up, because that's all that's going to be viable is your own stuff. I don't know why that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but and I'm not going to go into record contracts and how criminal those agreements are, but it's well known. And so over time, the Dick Nixon, sorry, not Dick Nixon, that's Rich, that's the president. Dick Winters, the guy who wrote the book literally on assault on a fixed position, the guy who took out the big flak 88s on D-Day, and developed a simple system that was needed at the time for recruiting, intelligence, operations, logistics, and development during the campaign. It's very, very effective shit.
I would use references. If
you've ever seen Band of Brothers, that whole series on HBO, Band of Brothers, is about Dick Winters and his 101st Airborne Company.
No, I never quoted anything. I never told anybody in the guild that I was doing that. I told them I was a Scientologist. One of the rules, the number one rule of the guild, was no religious bigotry, because I felt like people, like, there were a couple times when I said I was a Scientologist, and they were just like, "Are you fucking stupid?" Now I realize, like, yeah, that was totally correct. But at the time, I was extremely offended by it, and I would just kick a person out. Like, look, man, I'm not going to give you shit for being a Jewish person or Catholic person or whatever. Like, you're this religious hatred and bigotry that's gone.
The bigotry. I don't know if y'all caught Aaron's video yesterday where they kept saying the word bigot. That's a very popular word that they say, or a bit religious bigotry, racial hatred, religious hatred, hate speech, all of that. So it was a policy. No politics, no religion, no drama. That was an equal sign in between there. No politics plus no religion equals no drama. And I did that mostly because I didn't want anyone to be questioning me about being a Scientologist, because I still was at that time, and then I began questioning it.
No one's going to be doing that in this guild. Judge not, lest ye be judged. And I still believe that. Um, so, confirmation bias. I know I've kind of derailed a little bit, but actually, when talking about cyber psychology, this is a very interesting thing, and it continues to go on. I led that guild as a guild leader with that title for 8 years, close to 8 years. The name of the guild changed 2 or 3 times. But what's amazing
Yeah, it was, Bo.
is that I still play with these guys today online. We're a community of gamers from all over the world: Germany, Latvia, Spain.
Amy, yes. Amy Jean, well, quote, quote, are you an idiot isn't the best way to get through to people anyway. And that's why I made that rule in the guild, was because there were already things that I did that I was disagreeing with in terms of the church, and I was leaning towards being an indie Scientologist, which is, in some cases just sort of a natural way to go. Some Scientologists end up in the indie sphere, but I did not want anyone who didn't understand the depth of what it was I was going through with the losing my religion aspect, because that's what it felt like. It felt like Ron was right and his shit got hijacked around that time, 2009, 2010. I'm looking at Scientology and I'm like shaking my head. Damn it, they screwed Ron's stuff all up. It's all screwed up. They had to reprint the entire basics. They're redoing lectures. I started questioning whether or not they were editing some of the lectures, and I was talking to like Pierre ETA, and people on the ESMB boards who had been at St. Hill, and getting all sorts of information, and then like retreating and trying to process it. So I didn't want in my gaming guild, where I went to have fun and unwind from work, to be filled with that and those kinds of comments. Yeah, they're not helpful, is I think your point, and it is a very valid point. Mind My Blues. A group is only as successful as its weakest link. Isn't it so? Usually. I mean, I think I think in terms of what I'm talking about in this video and what I'm thinking about right now, I'm thinking about, organizational and operational like efficiency. However, that doesn't apply in my mind to everything, the weakest link. In some cases, what some people may consider weakness or inability may be a window in which we can look at and view ourselves, another perspective, and see something. And I think there's value in that. But as far as like operational efficiency for a group, yeah, I mean, usually you're only as strong as your weakest link. Usually, it just depends on how many strong, competent people are there. I don't know. Those are my aspersions as to that. Here we go.
Italy, Greece, West Coast, anywhere in North America, Canada, South Africa. We've been so big at times where we had people to cover every single time zone when we played EVE Online. And I find it fascinating because you get to meet people from all kind of different cultures. And there's a core group of people that are still playing together, and I still play with them. and they're some of my favorite people to talk to. I wish I could meet all of them in real life. I've met some of them in real life, and they're every bit as much of my friend as I would expect them to be, which is fascinating, considering we've never met. But the ones that I did meet were exactly how I expected, because we had spent years talking to each other and working, playing together. So I would say that that belief perseverance is probably the core issue here in confirmation bias, because the more that belief persists, the more you're going to have these illusory concepts in your mind, or bias, you know.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, what I think I'm saying there, and I could say it better now, is that the belief perseverance. The longer the belief persists, the more of those illusory correlations can cannot like they're less illusory. They seem more real. So the illusory correlations with the truth effect repeated over and over and over and over can become less illusory and more part of your belief structure. And so belief perseverance, breaking that down. At one point in my videos, I said it was important for me. I may have said it was important in general to completely reject everything and see what happens, basically. Because if that to me, that was the way to break belief perseverance. Just don't believe anything, and then start deducting reasons to believe things. And yeah, that seems to track.
And that's
Mock and Amy will have great points as to the weak link thing. Mock says vulnerability is strength. It took me a bit to figure that one out. I totally understand. And then Amy Jean said the weakness may just be a different kind of strength, and that's kind of what I mean or just kind of what I was trying to say when I said, in some situations where like it's not a group that has a particular object in mind that must accomplish a task, but just in general, like weak link, like, okay, you look at that person, and there may be a lot of weaknesses, there may be disabilities, but there may be chances to reflect back on what they can do that you can't, like it's I still think that y'all said it better than I did.
So that's my video response to Kaiva Goes. I have to split it up into two parts, but Kaiva, I'm going to keep going until I get through that list. And this has been the most exhaustive one yet, because it's two videos. One's 30 minutes and one's around 20 minutes. So I hope you enjoy it. And if you're a gamer and you want to play with some cool guys, I'm the only ex-Scientologist in the group, just so you know. So,
all right, so that's me like saying, hey, you want to join the Discord, whatever. And now we have the final. I'm doing all of them. I don't give
and
a
then
shit.
accuse me of very, very horrible.
All right, 4 minutes. Yeah, all right. So 4 more minutes. Not a big deal. Well, maybe there was more. Where were we?
Okay. My phone died.
Here.
Person sit down in a chair for 36 hours like I used to do in Fallen Earth. For me, it was the preconditioning or the classical conditioning that I had in Scientology, where I had an objective and I'm going to push it to a done. That's what they call it, you know. I need you to push this to a done. Well, my goal was to destroy Fist of the Empire, and I made sure that I was online at all times for all people when I was in Fist of the Empire, so that I could create trust with the people in Fist.
I was wondering what that noise was. It's raining. It's raining in the video.
And use that trust to destroy the group through various means.
That face.
I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate the subscriptions. I appreciate you keeping up with me. I love all this.
Yeah, that was totally online sociopathic shit that I did. And that face was, well, I did it. Good Lord.
As I said in an earlier video, there was a time when you guys were my only support, and that's no joke. Not even my own mother and father were believing what I was telling them. They had no idea that none of this,
this
that
is
any
hard
of this
to
went
hear.
on in Scientology. They thought I was okay and happy. So when I talked about it, it was horrible timing because I was changing. My wife couldn't handle it. Okay.
All right, so that was important to go through for the last one, and then the last one's 4 minutes. I'm glad I decided to just get through this because I didn't want to break it up into multiple segments. Probably because of this.
I mean, very, very horrible, horrible things. And my parents were like, are you just saying all this Scientology stuff to distract us from what she's saying? And so it was a real moment of feeling abandoned and cast out. Not just from my family that I created, but my own parents, my own family, extended family. And if you're a father that's been accused of things like that, in fact, my future ex-brother-in-law is going to court today. My ex-wife's sister has made the same accusations against him. So, in a way...
And their mother made the same accusations against their stepfather. It seemed to be illusory correlations.
In a very bittersweet way. Because I don't wish this on anybody, not even my own worst enemy, not even Satan himself if he existed. I wouldn't wish it on him. It's just utter misery and pain to be accused of something like that and not having done it. Because the court system here in Louisiana just assumes that you did it, and they do a big investigation. It lasts a long time, costs a lot of money, and in the meantime, your kids suffer. And I can't stand to see children suffer. I suffered as a child in a lot of ways, and I just want to see children happy. So, and as I said, that's the main goal for me as a psychologist, aspiring psychologist, is to help children.
I had to drop the semester because I couldn't afford to keep going to school, and I couldn't focus either.
To help,
and I also had cancer.
Adults help children, to understand children, and I can't think of any better way to interact these days with kids than through online games. There's a lot of predators online. It's getting much better than it used to be. The CIA and the FBI have made huge strides in the correct direction, IT-wise, to protect children from online predators. But there's more to be done, in my opinion, as far as fostering healthy cyber relationships and educating children, not just in school, because in school they're educated on how to treat people, but when they go online, that's a world.
This makes me think of Roblox, and my kids. I do as much as I can, and you know, I'm not a helicopter parent or anything, but you know, I talk to them about, you know, very early on, you know, because when they first started playing online games, those little avatars with names of them didn't really mean much to them. I had to, you know, establish that those are real people and you don't know who they are. And, you know, you don't tell them information, any personal information. I followed the guidelines that I got from a school teacher, like about what topics to bring up at what age. Um, that was probably sourced from psychology resource, you know.
That
There we
has
go.
no clearly defined rules. And there have been people who have trolled, which is bullying online, trolled people to kill themselves, and they've done it. It's happened in EVE Online several times. The community in EVE Online actually cheers when this happens. It's disgusting to me. And the fact that it's, you know, basically kids that are killing themselves over a video game really, really breaks my heart, because I've lived in those worlds and I can connect with it. I understand how much it means to them to be part of that world, and for them to be bullied so bad that, you know, because they connect with that world more than the real world, I can completely follow that chain of thought and understand how a kid could end up killing himself. And I think there should be more education on how to navigate through our cyber world. Just like we teach kids how to navigate through the world as they go through the school system, or we're supposed to. So I'll end off with that note. Kaiva Go, you are awesome. And I'm going to continue this response. The next one will be, let's see, fundamental attribution error. That one will be good. I'm going to take this call. You guys have a great day.
Okay. So, okay, that I could go with that. But that's where'd my mouse go? There it is. All right. Picture of Travis in the studio. He's healing his left arm. He had surgery. I got it all done in just over 3 hours, so an hour per video. It was nice to hang out with y'all for this time. It really blows my mind how some of y'all are willing to sit and spend this time like this. So let's see. I'll just roll the outro. Main screen off. Amy Jean, trying to teach my kids to be careful online has been a little stressful. Not giving out sensitive info and not listening to bullies like that. Yeah, it's real serious. It's real serious, Amy. And we can talk about that. The cyber psych video that I did, I don't think it's up, and I could do a review of it. Probably has some information like that, and we could maybe go further on it, because it really is a thing. I know it from, like, if, you know, having experienced what I experienced through that one MMO, I know that there are enough dynamics in online environments, enough interpersonal dynamics to create very, very complex systems, and even, you know, cultures, bad cultures. So, Xenu, if you know I'm right, you know Chad did it.